The jump gate shimmered like liquid mercury as the Terran scout fleet emerged into unknown space. Captain Elena Marquez stood on the bridge of the TSS Pathfinder, watching the navigation displays recalibrate after the jump. Her crew of 43 moved with practiced efficiency, running system checks and scanning the new sector. "Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures," Lieutenant Hayes called from the sensor station. "Multiple structures detected, distance 12 million kilometers." Elena leaned forward in her command chair. They had expected empty space, perhaps an asteroid field or a dead system. The jump gate they had discovered 3 months ago was supposed to lead to unclaimed territory, a fresh expansion opportunity for humanity's growing colonial efforts. "Put it on screen," Elena ordered. The main viewport flickered and displayed what lay ahead. Her breath caught in her throat. Enormous stations hung in view. The void like metal mountains. Each one bristled with weapon arrays, sensor pods, and docking ports for ships larger than anything humanity had ever built. The structures formed a grid pattern, creating a defensive perimeter that stretched across millions of kilometers. "Those aren't exploration stations," Commander Parks said quietly from his position beside her chair. "That's a border wall." Before Elena could respond, every console on the bridge lit up with warning signals. "Captain, we're being painted by targeting systems," Hayes shouted. "Multiple locks, hundreds of them." "All ships, evasive formation Delta," Elena snapped into the fleet channel. "Do not power weapons, but bring shields to maximum." The 5 ships of her small fleet began to spread out, but Elena knew it was a futile gesture. Whatever civilization built those stations could swat them like insects if they chose to. A communication signal burst across all frequencies, bypassing their encryption protocols as if they didn't exist. The main screen shifted to show a creature that made Elena's skin crawl. It stood on 4 jointed legs, its body covered in segmented chitin that gleamed like polished obsidian. Multiple eyes arranged in a geometric pattern across its triangular head, fixed on her, with cold intelligence. Mandibles clicked together as it spoke, and the translation software struggled to keep up. "Unknown vessels, you have violated the sovereign space of the Zorvathi Dominion," the creature said. "I am Harvex Prime, Sector Commander of the 4th Border Fleet. You will immediately cut your engines, submit to boarding inspection, and surrender all technology and data cores. Failure to comply will result in immediate destruction." Elena felt her crew's eyes on her. This was the moment that would define everything that came next. She thought of Earth. Away. She thought of the colonies, barely 50 years old and still finding their footing in the galaxy. She thought of humanity's long history of being told to submit, to bow, to accept the will of the powerful. "Commander Harvex Prime," Elena said, keeping her voice steady. "I am Captain Elena Marquez of the Terran Scout Fleet. We entered this sector through a naturally occurring jump gate. We had no knowledge of the Zorvathi Dominion or your territorial claims. However, humanity does not recognize arbitrary claims over free space. We will return through the gate we came from, but we will not submit to boarding or surrender our technology." Silence stretched across the communication channel. Elena could almost feel Harvex Prime's confusion radiating through the screen. "You refuse?" the Zorvathi commander finally said. "You are 5 small vessels against 300 warships of the Dominion border fleet. Every species we have encountered has understood the logic of survival. Submit or be destroyed. Those are your only options." Elena looked at Commander Park, then at Hayes, then at the faces of her bridge crew. She saw fear there, yes, but also something else. Determination, pride, a refusal to kneel. "Then you've never encountered humans before," Elena said. "All ships, emergency scatter pattern Omega. Weapons free, target the command station. We're going through them, not around them. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. The Pathfinder's engines roared to full power as the ship dove toward the nearest gap in the station grid. Behind her, the other 4 scout ships, the Magellan, the Zhenghe, the Columbus, and the Ibn Battuta, broke formation and scattered in different directions. The Zorvathi stations opened fire. Space filled with energy beams and kinetic projectiles. Pathfinder's shields flared as impacts struck from multiple angles. "Return fire, all batteries," Elena ordered. The scout ship's modest weapons weren't designed for fleet combat, but they struck with precision. The Pathfinder's railguns punched holes in a sensor array, while its missiles streaked toward power junctions on the nearest station. "The Magellan is taking heavy fire," Hayes reported. "Shields at 30% and falling." Elena gritted her teeth. Captain Okafor commanded the Magellan, a good friend and better officer. "Tell Okafor to use the station for cover. Put mass between him and the guns." The battle became a desperate dance. Human ships darted between the massive stations, using their smaller size and maneuverability to avoid the worst of the incoming fire. The Ibn Battuta made a suicide run at the command station, where Harvex Prime coordinated the defense. The ship's captain, a fierce woman named Amari, pushed her engines past safety limits. Her vessel slammed into the station's shield generators at nearly relativistic speed. The explosion was visible across the entire sector. The command station's shields collapsed, leaving it vulnerable. "All ships, concentrate fire on the command station," Elena broadcast. "Make Amari's sacrifice count." The remaining human ships poured everything they had into the exposed station. Railgun slugs tore through armor plating. Missiles detonated against weapon batteries and docking ports. The Zhenghe, its engines failing, rammed directly into the station's main power core. The secondary explosion ripped through 3 levels, venting atmosphere and debris into space. "Captain, the Columbus reports critical damage," Hayes called out. "They're venting air and have lost main power." Elena's jaw clenched. That was 3 ships lost or crippled. "Ship if necessary. We'll pick up survivors if we can." The Pathfinder shuddered as a massive energy beam grazed its port side. Half the bridge consoles went dark. "Shields down to 15%, Park reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. We can't take much more of this." Elena looked at the tactical display. The command station was badly damaged, listing and trailing debris. The other stations were beginning to reorient, bringing their full firepower to bear on the surviving human ships. It was now or never. "Helm, plot a jump solution back to the original gate," Elena ordered. "We're leaving." "But Captain, the Columbus," Hayes began. "Is already lost," Elena cut her off. "We stay and we all die. We leave and we can warn Earth. Prepare for emergency jump." The Pathfinder's jump drive spun up with a sound like reality tearing. The Magellan, still functional, but battered, aligned itself for the same jump vector. Jump in 3, 2, 1. Space twisted, and the human ships vanished. Behind them, the Zorvathi border fleet hung in shock. 300 warships had failed to stop 5 small vessels. Harvex Prime, trapped in his damaged command station, watched the empty space where the humans had disappeared. In 400 years, no one had ever fought back like that. No one had ever chosen death over submission. No one had ever made the Dominion bleed. He activated the emergency communication channel to Dominion High Command. "This is Sector Commander Harvex Prime," he said, mandibles clicking with a mixture of shame and something he had never felt before: fear. "A new species has entered our space. They refused to submit. They fought back. They escaped. Request immediate reinforcement and strategic analysis. These humans are unlike anything we have encountered. SP. They do not hesitate. They do not fear. They do not return." The Dominion Council chamber stretched a kilometer in diameter, its walls carved from a single asteroid of pure obsidian. 12 high platforms ringed the central floor, where Grand Executor Cathara stood, her chitinous armor gleaming under the harsh lights. On each platform sat a council member, representing the 12 conquered species that now served the Zorvathi Dominion. The holographic display at the chamber's center showed the border station battle on repeat. 5 small human ships darting between massive installations. The Ibn Battuta's devastating suicide run. The Zhenghe's final charge into the power core. The escape of the 2 surviving vessels. Again, Cathara commanded. The display reset and played once more. She watched with her multiple eyes, tracking different aspects simultaneously. 417 years, she said, her voice resonating through translation devices. For 4 centuries, the Dominion has expanded without meaningful resistance. Species either submit immediately upon contact, or they resist briefly before accepting reality. These humans did neither. War Marshal Draxus shifted on his platform, his larger frame marking him as a combat-bred Zorvathi. Grand Executor, with respect, they got lucky, he said. Sector Commander Harvex Prime commanded only border patrol vessels, not true warships. His formations were designed to intimidate, not to fight a determined enemy. Give me 1 battle group, and I will end this irritation within a week. Cathara's mandibles clicked in thought. She had ruled the Dominion military for 80 years, crushing 17 major rebellions, and absorbing 23 new species into the empire. She understood power and how to project it. But something about the human engagement troubled her. Play the final moments again, she ordered. Focus on the command. The display zoomed in on Captain Marquez's face as she gave the scatter order. Cathara watched the human's expression. No panic, no hesitation, just cold determination. They chose to fight when logic demanded surrender, Cathara said. They sacrificed 3 ships to wound 1 station. They accepted death rather than submit. This is not luck, War Marshal. This is cultural psychology. These humans may be more dangerous than their technology suggests. Draxus's mandibles clicked dismissively. Then they will die gloriously. I request permission to lead a punitive expedition. We will find their home system and teach them the cost of defying the Dominion. Cathara considered this. The other council members watched silently, as they always did. Most were subjugated species, who had learned that survival meant silence, unless asked to speak. Approved, Cathara finally. Take the 9th Fleet. 120 warships. Find these humans and eliminate them. But War Marshal, bring me their technology and any survivors. I want to understand what makes them think they can defy us. Draxus bowed low. It will be done, Grand Executor. 3 weeks later, the TSS Pathfinder limped into Threshold Station. The human outpost sat just beyond the jump gate that led back toward Earth. It was humanity's furthest expansion point, a combination military base and research facility manned by 800 personnel. Admiral James Okonkwo was waiting in the docking bay when Elena's crew disembarked. He saw immediately that she had aged in the weeks since departure. Her eyes carried a weight they hadn't before. Captain Marquez, he said formally, then pulled her into a brief embrace. Thank God you made it back. Report. Toward the command center. Elena delivered her account in clipped military prose, but Okonkwo heard the emotion underneath. The loss of 3 crews, the shock of discovering a hostile empire, the terrible choice to fight or submit. You did the right thing, Okonkwo said when she finished. If you had submitted, we would have lost everything. Technology, tactical data, Earth's location. You gave us a chance to prepare. Did I? Elena asked bitterly. Prepare for what, Admiral? We saw hundreds of ships at just 1 border station. How big is this Dominion? How many ships do they have? How do we fight an enemy that can field that kind of power? Okonkwo led her into the command center, where a dozen officers worked at various stations. Maps of local space covered the walls, with the jump gate network marked in glowing lines. "We've been analyzing the data you brought back. The energy signatures, the ship designs, the communication protocols. Our best estimate is that the Zorvathi Dominion spans at least 12 star systems, possibly more. Fleet strength unknown, but likely in the thousands of capital ships." Elena felt her stomach drop. "Then we're already dead. We can't fight that." "No," Okonkwo agreed, "we can't. But we can make them bleed for every inch. We can make victory so costly that they decide we're not worth the effort. And we can hope that somewhere in that empire, other species are watching and learning that the Dominion isn't invincible." He pulled up a holographic display showing Threshold Station and the surrounding space. "I've been authorized to militarize this station fully," he said. "Every available ship is being rerouted here. We're mining the approaches, building weapons platforms, and preparing defensive positions. Come. And they will come. We'll give them a fight they'll never forget." Elena studied the defensive plans. It was impressive work, but ultimately futile. "They'll crush us, Admiral." "Probably," Okonkwo admitted, "but they'll remember that we fought. And maybe that memory will matter someday." The Dominion's Ninth Fleet arrived 43 days after the initial contact. War Marshal Draxus commanded from his flagship, the Inexorable Victory, a massive dreadnought that could destroy a planet if given enough time. His fleet formed a perfect attack formation, textbook Dominion military doctrine. Scouts in front to detect threats, heavy capital ships in the center to deliver overwhelming firepower, support vessels in the rear to sustain the advance. "Scan the area," Draxus ordered. "Locate the human base." His sensor officer worked in silence for several minutes. "War Marshal, we're detecting a single station, heavily fortified. Multiple defensive satellites, minefields, and weapons platforms. Ship count, 27 human vessels, various classes." Draxus's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. They knew we would come. They prepared. Good. A cornered animal fights hardest, but that only makes the kill more satisfying. "All ships, advance to optimal firing range. Destroy the station and all defending vessels. Leave nothing intact." The Ninth Fleet surged forward like a metal tide. The human mines detonated early, triggered by proximity sensors. Explosions blossomed across the fleet's vanguard, destroying 3 scout ships and damaging a dozen more. "Acceptable losses," Draxus said. "Continue advance." The weapons platforms opened fire next, launching missiles and railgun slugs. The Dominion's point defense systems intercepted most of them, but some got through. Exploded as a nuclear-tipped missile overwhelmed its shields. 2 more ships took heavy damage from kinetic impacts. "Return fire," Draxus ordered. "Suppress those platforms." The Ninth Fleet's guns spoke with devastating power. Energy beams lanced across space, vaporizing weapons platforms. Missiles streaked toward Threshold Station, slamming into its shields with explosive force. Then the human ships attacked. They came from multiple vectors, using the debris field and destroyed platforms as cover. The human vessels were smaller, faster, and completely unpredictable. A destroyer-class ship, the TSS Defiant, made a direct run at the Inexorable Victory. Draxus watched with interest as the human ship ignored every logical tactical principle. It didn't try to avoid fire. It didn't maneuver for optimal weapon range. It simply charged straight at his flagship, taking hit after hit. "That ship's captain has lost their mind," his tactical officer said. "No," Draxus replied slowly. "They're trying to trade their ship for ours. A destroyer for a dreadnought," he added. "They think the exchange is worth it." The Defiant's shields failed halfway through its charge. The next volley tore through its armor, venting atmosphere and debris. But the ship kept coming, its engines pushed beyond safety limits. "Destroy it," Draxus commanded. Every gun on the inexorable Victory's port side focused on the Defiant. The human ship came apart under the concentrated fire, breaking into three main sections. The forward section, still propelled by momentum and dying engines, slammed into the inexorable Victory's starboard shield. The impact wasn't enough to penetrate, but it drained the shield completely. "Shield's down to 40%, the tactical officer reported. "Captain of that vessel is dead, along with all crew." Moment. That captain had thrown away their life and ship for a chance to damage his flagship. No rational commander would make that choice. But the humans had done it without hesitation. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships fought with a ferocity that shocked the Dominion crews. When one ship was disabled, its crew would detonate the reactor if enemy ships approached to capture it. When ammunition ran low, human vessels rammed Dominion ships. When defeat became inevitable, human captains broadcast defiant messages rather than pleas for mercy. Threshold Station fell eventually, its shields finally overwhelmed by sustained bombardment. The human defensive fleet was annihilated, all 27 ships destroyed. But the cost to Draxus was staggering. 43 ships destroyed outright. Another 67 damaged to varying degrees. 1,200 Zorvathi warriors dead. And for what? One human station and a handful of small vessels. Draxus stood in the ruins of his victory, watching Threshold Station's debris tumble through space. His mandibles clicked slowly as he composed his report to Grand Executor Kai Thara. "The humans fought without regard for their own survival," he would write. "They employed suicide tactics as standard procedure. They refused surrender even when defeat was absolute. Recommendation: these humans represent a psychological threat beyond their military capacity. They must be eliminated completely, or they will inspire others to resist." He paused, then added one more line. "These humans do not hesitate, and that makes them dangerous." Grand Executor Kai Thara read War Marshal Draxus's report 3 times. Each reading made her more certain that humanity represented something the Dominion had never faced before. Not a military threat. Their technology was inferior, their numbers insignificant. But a threat to the fundamental principle that held the Empire together: the inevitability of Dominion victory. She activated the Emergency Council and began assembling the Iron Tide, 500 warships drawn from fleets across the Empire, the largest military force the Dominion had deployed in 2 centuries. Meanwhile, 12 light-years away, Admiral Okonkwo stood in the emergency session of the Terran Defense Coalition. Representatives from Earth and all 17 colony worlds filled the chamber, their faces projected on holographic screens. "You want us to fight?" Governor Patricia Chen of New Beijing shouted. "We have less than 200 ships total, most of them converted cargo haulers. The Dominion has thousands. This is suicide. It's survival," Okonkwo replied calmly. "If we surrender, we lose everything. Our independence, our technology, our freedom. We become slaves, like every other species they've conquered." "At least as slaves, we'd be alive," another governor argued. Okonkwo's expression hardened. "I've studied the intelligence we gathered. The Dominion doesn't value life the way we do. Subject species are tools, resources to be exploited. They work until they die, then they're replaced. Is that the future you want for your children?" The chamber fell silent. Finally, Director Sarah Abimbola of the Terran Defense Forces spoke. "What's your plan, Admiral?" Okonkwo pulled up a tactical display showing the jump gate network between Dominion space and human territory. "We can't win a direct battle, so we don't fight one. Adopt guerrilla tactics. Hit their supply lines, their mining operations, their communications relays. Make every advance cost them. Make them bleed for every light year. That's not a plan for victory, Governor Chen said. That's a plan for dying slowly. No, Okonkwo corrected. It's a plan for making them decide victory isn't worth the cost, and for giving other subjugated species time to see that the Dominion can be hurt. He switched the display to show intelligence about the Dominion's internal structure. They rule through fear and perceived invincibility. But we've already proven they can bleed. If we keep fighting, keep resisting, we might inspire rebellions in their empire. That's our only real chance. The vote was close, but humanity chose to fight. Over the next 3 months, human forces transformed their strategy. Static defenses were abandoned in favor of mobile strike groups. Civilian cargo ships were retrofitted with weapons and armor. Every available resource was poured into creating improvised weapons, nuclear mines, kinetic kill satellites, railgun platforms that could be deployed and abandoned. Commander Leora Chen led one of these strike groups. Her ship, the TSS Mongoose, was a former mining vessel, now bristling with missile tubes and stolen Zorvathi shield generators. She commanded a crew of 37, all volunteers who understood the odds. Target acquired, her sensor officer reported. Dominion supply convoy, 6 freighters and 4 escort frigates. Distance, 3 million kilometers. Leora studied the tactical display. The convoy was carrying supplies to the Iron Tide fleet gathering at the edge of human space. Hit it hard enough, and they could delay the invasion by weeks. All ships, attack pattern Epsilon, she ordered. Fast strike, maximum damage, get out, before their reinforcements arrive. The Mongoose and its 3 companion ships dropped out of stealth and accelerated toward the convoy. The Dominion escorts reacted quickly, but the humans had surprise on their side. Missiles streaked across the void. The first freighter exploded, its cargo of ammunition detonating in a cascade of secondary blasts. 2 escort frigates moved to intercept, but the human ships scattered, using their smaller size to avoid the worst of the return fire. Mongoose, we've got multiple hits on Target 3, one of the other human captains reported. That's a fuel tanker. Confirmed, Leora said. All ships concentrate fire. Railgun slugs and missiles hammered the fuel tanker. Its shields collapsed and its hull ruptured. Superheated fuel vented into space, igniting in a brief, brilliant explosion. Dominion reinforcements inbound, her tactical officer warned. 6 cruisers, estimated arrival. 4 minutes. All ships withdraw, Leora ordered. The human vessels broke off and jumped away, leaving 3 destroyed freighters and 2 damaged escorts behind. It was a tiny victory in a vast war, but it mattered. Across human space, dozens of similar strikes happened every week. The Dominion's advance slowed, as they were forced to protect every supply line, every mining operation, every communication relay. But the cost to humanity was severe. Every week brought news of another strike group lost, another colony evacuated, another defensive position overrun. The Dominion's Iron Tide finally entered human space 4 months after the fall of Threshold Station. 500 warships advanced in perfect formation, brushing aside human resistance like dust. The colony world of New Haven fell in 2 days. Port Armstrong was glassed from orbit after its defenders refused to surrender. The industrial center of Forge Station fought for 3 weeks before being overwhelmed. Admiral Okonkwo watched from his command ship as the Iron Tide advanced relentlessly toward Earth. His fleet was down to 80 operational vessels, not nearly enough. Admiral were receiving a distress call from the mining colony on Kepler 442b, his communications officer reported. The Dominion is demanding surrender. The colonists are refusing. Okonkwo closed his eyes briefly. Kepler 442b had 12,000 civilians. Tell them to evacuate if they can, he said quietly. We don't have the forces to defend them. 3 days later, reports arrived that Kepler 442b had been destroyed. But the colonists had done something unexpected before the end. They had broadcast their final stand across every communication frequency they could access. Images of human civilians facing Dominion warriors. Audio of colonists singing Earth songs as the bombardment began, and final message. We don't kneel, and we don't beg. We don't surrender. We don't surrender. Tell them we fought. The broadcast was intercepted across a dozen Dominion systems. On the subjugated world of Varathi Prime, a reptilian worker named Kes heard the transmission. His species had been conquered by the Dominion 193 years ago. In nearly 2 centuries, the Varathi had never seriously resisted. They had accepted their fate as the Dominion's labor force. But something about the human broadcast struck Kes differently. These humans had nothing, inferior weapons, no allies, no hope of victory. Yet they fought anyway. They chose death over submission. That night, Kes gathered with others in the underground quarters where Varathi workers lived. "Did you hear the human broadcast?" he asked quietly. The others nodded. Speaking of rebellion was dangerous, but the humans' defiance had planted a seed. "They're going to die," one Varathi said. "The Dominion will crush them." "Probably," Kes agreed. "But they'll die free. Is that not better than living as we do?" The question hung in the air. Across the Dominion, similar conversations were happening. The Silkari, a spacefaring merchant species reduced to transport workers, discussed the humans in their crowded barracks. The Kryn, once proud warriors, now forced into factory labor, shared the recordings in secret meetings. The humans were losing their war, but their refusal to surrender was spreading like a virus through the Dominion's subject populations. Meanwhile, Commander Leora Chen was preparing her most ambitious mission yet. Intelligence had identified a major Dominion shipyard deep inside their territory. The facility produced the heavy cruisers that formed the backbone of their fleet. Destroying it wouldn't stop the war. Hurt. "This is a one-way mission," Leora told her assembled crew. "The shipyard is too well defended. We'll get in, we'll destroy it, but we won't get out. Anyone who wants to leave, now's the time. No judgment, no shame." No one moved. They had all volunteered, knowing the odds. "All right then," Leora said, feeling pride swell in her chest. "Let's go make them remember us." The Mongoose and 2 other ships made a series of calculated jumps, using stolen Dominion navigation codes to penetrate deep into enemy space. They emerged near the shipyard 23 hours later. The facility was enormous, a massive ring structure with construction berths for 20 ships simultaneously. Currently, 8 heavy cruisers were in various stages of completion. "No stealth this time," Leora said. "Full burn, straight at the antimatter storage tanks. Let's make this count." The shipyard. Alarms blared across the facility. Dominion defense platforms opened fire, but the humans had already committed to their attack run. The first human ship was destroyed before it could reach the shipyard. The second managed to ram a partially completed cruiser, the explosion tearing through 2 construction berths. The Mongoose took hit after hit, its armor ablating away under concentrated fire. Leora stood on her bridge, holding the armrests of her captain's chair as the ship shook. "Broadcast on all frequencies," she ordered. Our communications officer nodded, and Leora spoke clearly into the recorder. "This is Commander Leora Chen of the Terran Defense Forces. To anyone listening across the Dominion, we don't kneel, we don't beg, we don't stop. Remember that." She looked at her crew one last time. "It's been an honor." Then she activated the manual override for the antimatter. Containment. The Mongoose dove into the shipyard storage tanks and detonated. The explosion was visible from 3 astronomical units away. The entire shipyard disintegrated, along with 8 cruisers and 15,000 Dominion workers. And Commander Leora Chen's final broadcast echoed across dozens of star systems. On Varathi Prime, Kes heard it and made a decision. On the Silkari merchant worlds, captains began quietly sabotaging their cargo runs. On the Kryn factory planets, production slowed as workers began making deliberate mistakes. The humans were losing their war, but they had ignited something far more dangerous to the Dominion. The idea that resistance was possible. The belief that freedom was worth dying for. And across the Empire, that idea began to spread. 6 months into the war, Grand Executor Kythara stood before a tactical display showing the state of her empire. The Iron Tide had captured 3 human colony worlds. 2 more had been destroyed rather than allow them to fall intact. Human resistance continued everywhere, bleeding her forces with constant raids. But more troubling were the red markers appearing across her own territory. "Explain these incidents," she demanded. Her intelligence coordinator, a Zorvathi named Thelax, gestured at the display. "Grand Executor, we are experiencing unprecedented unrest among subjugated populations. The Varathi have staged 17 separate uprisings in the past 2 months. The Silkari merchant convoys report a 43% increase in accidents and shipping delays. The Kryn manufacturing worlds show production drops of 30 to 50%. Kythara's mandibles clicked in frustration. "The humans?" Thelax confirmed. "Their propaganda broadcasts have spread throughout our communication networks. Subject species are monitoring human resistance. They see a small, technologically inferior species refusing to submit. It inspires them to question their own subjugation. Then jam the broadcasts," Kythara ordered. "Hunt down anyone spreading human propaganda. Make examples." "We have been doing so, Grand Executor," Thelax said carefully. "But the response has been counterproductive. Public executions lead to larger riots. Crackdowns inspire more sabotage. The more we punish, the more they resist." Kythara turned away from the display, her mind working through scenarios. The Dominion had ruled through overwhelming force and the perception of invincibility for 4 centuries. But the humans had shattered that perception. Every battle they fought, every suicide attack, every broadcast of defiance, chipped away at the foundation of Dominion authority. "What of the Varathi homeworld?" she asked. "Still in open rebellion," Thelax reported. "They control 3 major cities and have seized weapons from our garrisons. It has required 3 divisions to contain them, and we still haven't regained full control." Kythara made a decision. "Prepare orbital bombardment. Glass the primary cities. Kill 1 million Varathi as an example to the rest." Thelax hesitated. "Grand Executor, that will require pulling ships from the Iron Tide. The human advance continues, and we need every vessel to—" "The humans are nearly defeated," Kythara cut him off. "They have fewer than 80 operational warships left. Earth itself is within our reach. But if we allow the Varathi rebellion to succeed, if we show weakness to our subject species, the entire empire will burn. The threat is not the humans. Threat is the idea of resistance. Execute the bombardment." 3 days later, orbital strikes hit Varathi Prime. The capital city of Kythara was vaporized. 2 million Varathi died in the initial bombardment. The Dominion broadcast footage of the destruction across all subject worlds. The message was clear. Resistance meant extinction. But the bombardment had the opposite effect. On the Silkari merchant world of Thes, Captain Velar watched the broadcasts. He commanded a cargo ship that hauled supplies for the Dominion fleet. For 57 years, he had accepted his role. Silkari had been conquered, absorbed, their independence erased. That was simply reality. But watching the Varathi cities burn, he thought of the human broadcasts. He remembered Commander Leorichen's final words: "We don't kneel, we don't beg, we don't stop." Velar made a choice when his ship next carried ammunition. To the Iron Tide, the cargo containers would be rigged to explode when opened. He would die in the blast, but he would hurt the Dominion. And maybe, just maybe, others would follow. He was right. Across the Empire, the Varathi bombardment became a rallying point. The Silkari sabotage intensified. The Kryn, pushed beyond endurance, began killing their Zorvathi overseers. Even the compliant species started showing signs of resistance. The Dominion was forced to pull more ships from the front lines to contain rebellions. The advance toward Earth slowed. Admiral Okonkwo recognized the opportunity. The Dominion is overstretched, he told his remaining commanders. They're fighting on multiple fronts now. This is our chance to make them reconsider. Captain Elena Marquez, promoted after Threshold Station and now commanding the rebuilt TSS Defiance, studied the tactical plans. We have 73 operational ships, Admiral. The Iron Tide still has over 400. Even distracted, they can overwhelm us. In a direct battle, yes, Okonkwo agreed. But I'm not proposing a direct battle. I'm proposing we go for their leadership. He pulled up intelligence data. We've been monitoring Dominion communications. Grand Executor Kythara is personally overseeing the war from her command ship. She's gathering her fleet commanders for a strategic meeting in the Harad system. If we can strike there, if we can kill her, the Dominion command structure might fracture, Elena finished. It's a desperate plan, Admiral. We'd have to jump directly into the heart of their fleet. Yes, Okonkwo said simply. It's suicide, but it might work. Elena looked at the other commanders. She saw the same expression on every face: exhaustion, determination, and a willingness to die if it mattered. Do we leave? She asked. Preparations took 2 weeks. Every remaining human warship was brought to full readiness. Weapon systems were overhauled. Crews said goodbye to families via recorded messages, knowing they wouldn't return. Then something unexpected happened. A Zorvathi shuttle requested permission to dock with Okonkwo's flagship. It's a trick, Elena warned. Let them board, and they'll sabotage us. But Okonkwo was curious. He allowed the shuttle to dock under heavy guard. A single Zorvathi emerged, his chitin scarred and one mandible broken. I am Harvex Prime, the creature said, through a translator. Former sector commander of the 4th Border Fleet. Elena recognized him immediately. He was the commander from the first battle, the one whose station they had damaged. You have courage coming here, she said, her hand on her sidearm. I could kill you where you stand. You could, he replied, steady and composed. Harvex Prime agreed. But you would lose valuable intelligence. Okonkwo gestured for Elena to stand down. Why are you here, Commander? Because the Dominion is wrong, Harvex Prime said. I have served for 93 years. I have crushed 12 rebellions. I believed in Dominion's superiority, in the inevitability of our victory. But you humans showed me something I had never seen, a species that would rather die than submit. And I realized that all these years, we have not been bringing order. We have been building a prison. He produced a data crystal. This contains the location and defensive formations of Grand Executor Kythara's command fleet. Real-time tactical data, updated as of 6 hours ago. Security protocols and communication frequencies. Everything you need to strike at the heart of Dominion leadership. Okonkwo took the crystal carefully. What do you want in return? Return? Asylum, Harvex Prime said. I cannot return to the Dominion. I am already marked as a traitor for even suggesting we negotiate with you. And I want to see what happens when someone finally makes Kythera bleed. Elena still didn't trust him, but Okonkwo made the call. Agreed. You'll remain under guard, but you have asylum. The intelligence was verified over the next 48 hours. It was legitimate. Harvex Prime had given them everything they needed. The human fleet assembled for its final mission. 73 ships against the Iron Tide's gathering force of over 300 vessels. Admiral Okonkwo addressed his forces via fleet-wide broadcast. Every one of you volunteered for this mission, knowing the odds, he said. We're going to jump directly into the heart of the Dominion fleet. We're going to target Grand Executor Kithara's flagship. We're going to make them understand that humanity will never stop fighting. Most of us won't come home, but those who hear about this battle, those who learn what we did here, will remember that we chose freedom over life. We chose to stand rather than kneel. Whatever happens today, the galaxy will know that humanity crossed into the Dominion and didn't hesitate. The fleet jumped, space twisted, and 73 human warships emerged directly inside the Harith system. Directly into the middle of the Iron Tide fleet, alarms blared across 300 Dominion warships. Commanders shouted orders, but the humans had surprise and desperation on their side. All ships, target the Eternal Dominion, Okonkwo broadcast, maximum aggression, ramming speed. The human fleet dove toward Kithara's massive flagship like sharks toward blood. Dominion ships tried to intercept, but the humans scattered into dozens of attack vectors. Elena's Defiance led one strike group. Her engines pushed past safety limits. Weapons free, she ordered. Pour everything into their flagship's shields. Missiles and railgun slugs hammered the Eternal Dominion. Other human ships focused their fire on the same target. The flagship's shields began to flicker under the concentrated assault. Kithara stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display in disbelief. How did they know we were here? She demanded. How did they penetrate our security? Her tactical officer had no answer. The human ships were everywhere, fighting with the same suicidal determination they had shown since the first battle. A human destroyer rammed into a Dominion cruiser, detonating its reactor on impact. Both ships died together. A frigate, its weapons depleted, deliberately crashed into a battleship's engine section. The battleship's main drive failed, leaving it drifting and vulnerable. And still the humans came. Elena's Defiance took hit after hit. Her shields failed. Armor plating vaporized. But she kept her ship on course. Captain, we're losing life support, her engineering officer reported. Hull breaches on all decks. We can't take another hit. Elena looked at her crew. Some were already dead at their stations. Others were badly wounded. But those who remained were still working, still fighting. All power to engines, she ordered. We're going through their shields. The Defiance accelerated, a dying ship making one final charge. Kithara watched the human vessel approach. It was small, insignificant, but it refused to die. Destroy that ship, she commanded. Every weapon on the Eternal Dominion's port side focused on the Defiance. The human ship came apart under the onslaught, but momentum carried the forward section, engines still burning. Directly into the flagship's bridge. The impact was catastrophic. The bridge section of the Eternal Dominion exploded. Grand Executor Kithara died instantly, along with 200 crew members. The flagship began to list, its command structure destroyed. And across the Dominion fleet, chaos erupted as ships tried to determine who was in command. The death of Grand Executor Kithara sent shockwaves through the Dominion fleet. Without clear command, without the iron will that had directed their every move, the Sorvathi captains reverted to individual decision-making. Some tried to press the attack. Others moved to protect the crippled flagship. A few began arguing over who should assume command. Admiral Okonkwo watched from his damaged command ship as confusion rippled through the enemy formation. All ships, broadcast on all Dominion frequencies, he ordered. His communications officer, working at a sparking console with blood running down her face, managed to open the channel. Okonkwo's voice carried across 300 warships. To every warrior of the Dominion fleet, your Grand Executor is dead. Your leadership lies in ruins. You came to our space, expecting easy victory. But we taught you something your empire forgot over 4 centuries of forgetting. Conquest. Some beings would rather die free than live as slaves. He paused, letting his words sink in. And to every subjugated species listening across the Dominion, they bled. They fell. They are not invincible. Rise and be free. The broadcast ended. For a moment, nothing happened. Then War Marshal Draxus, commanding a battle group on the fleet's eastern flank, tried to establish order. All ships, this is War Marshal Draxus assuming command. Reform defensive positions and prepare to... Another Zorvathi commander interrupted. You have no authority to assume command. The succession protocols require council approval. We must withdraw and... A third voice cut in. Withdrawal is defeat. We should press the attack. These humans are nearly destroyed. Silence, Draxus roared. I am senior commander present and I... But his authority was already crumbling. The Dominion had ruled through centralized, absolute power. Without that central authority, without Kythara's unquestioned commands, the fleet began to fracture. Some ships withdrew to defensive positions. Others continued engaging human vessels. A few began arguing with each other. Okonkwo saw the opportunity. All remaining ships, disengage and scatter, he ordered. Jump to Rally Point Omega. We've done what we came to do. The surviving human ships, 19 out of 73, broke off and jumped away. The Dominion fleet, leaderless and confused, let them go. On Varathi Prime, Kess heard Okonkwo's broadcast in the underground resistance headquarters. For weeks, the Varathi had been fighting a losing battle against Dominion occupation forces. They had been slowly crushed, their numbers dwindling, their hope dying. But now everything changed. They killed the Grand Executor, Kess said, his voice filled with awe. The humans killed her. Around him, other Varathi stirred. If the humans can kill their leader, one rebel said, then the Dominion can be beaten. Then we can win, another added. Kess stood up, his reptilian features set with determination. Send word to all resistance cells, he ordered. We attack at dawn. Every garrison, every weapons depot, every Zorvathi official. If the humans can give their lives for freedom, so can we. The Varathi uprising exploded across their homeworld. Similar rebellions erupted simultaneously on 17 other conquered worlds. The Silkari, hearing of Kythara's death, seized control of 30 cargo ships and used them to attack Dominion supply bases. The Kryn workers rose up in their factories, killing overseers and sabotaging production facilities. Even species that had been subjugated for centuries found courage in humanity's example. Dominion, already stretched thin by the human war, couldn't contain the simultaneous rebellions. Fleets were diverted from the Iron Tide to suppress uprisings. Garrison forces found themselves besieged. Supply lines collapsed under coordinated sabotage. War Marshal Draxus managed to assert temporary control over the Iron Tide's remnants, but his position was contested by 3 other senior commanders. The fleet withdrew from human space to deal with internal crises. The war against humanity effectively ended, not through negotiation or surrender, but through the simple fact that the Dominion no longer had the resources to continue. Captain Elena Marquez regained consciousness 3 days after the battle. She was in a medical bay, her body covered in burns and broken bones. You're lucky to be alive, the doctor told her. We found you in an escape pod. You were the only survivor from the Defiance. Elena closed her eyes, remembering her crew. All dead except her. Did it work? She asked. Did we kill Kythara? Yes, the doctor confirmed. And the rebellion spread. The Dominion is collapsing. Elena felt tears on her face. So many dead, so much sacrifice. But they had won. Not a total victory, but enough. 3 years passed. The Zorvathi Dominion fragmented into competing factions. Some Zorvathi tried to maintain control over their territories. Others withdrew to their core worlds, abandoning the empire. A few progressive Zorvathi reached out to the freed species, seeking reconciliation. The subjugated species formed loose alliances. The Varathi, Silkari, and Kryn became the core of what would be called the Free Worlds Coalition. They invited humanity to join, but Admiral Okonkwo politely declined. "We didn't fight to build another empire," he said. "We fought for the right to be left alone. But we'll stand with you as allies." The first assembly of the Free Worlds Coalition was held on neutral ground, a former Dominion administrative station. Representatives from 23 species gathered to discuss their shared future. Admiral Elena Marquez, now recovered and representing humanity, stood before the assembly. She had been asked to speak about the human resistance. "Many of you have asked what gave us the courage to defy the Dominion," she began. "You've asked why we fought when logic said we should surrender. The answer is simple. We crossed into the Dominion and we didn't hesitate." She paused, looking at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds. "For too long you lived under the belief that the Dominion was inevitable," she said. "That resistance was futile. That survival meant submission." She paused again. "But survival at what cost? Humans have a saying, 'Give me liberty or give me death.' Encountered the Dominion. We had a choice. Submit and live as slaves, or resist and die as free beings. We chose freedom. Not because we're braver than you, not because we're stronger, but because we decided that some things are worth dying for." She gestured to the assembly. "You've all made the same choice now. You've risen up and claimed your freedom. Yes, it costs lives. Yes, the future is uncertain. But you're facing it as free beings, not as slaves." A Varathi representative stood. It was Kes, now a leader among his people. "The Dominion spent 400 years teaching us that resistance was impossible," he said. "Then humanity showed us it wasn't. You gave us hope. You gave us courage. Many humans died in your war. But their sacrifice freed billions." Elena shook her head. "We didn't sacrifice ourselves for you," she said honestly. "For our own freedom. But if our fight helped you find yours, then every life lost mattered. That's all any of us can hope for, that our struggles mean something beyond ourselves." A Silkari captain spoke next. "What comes next for humanity? Will you expand? Will you build your own empire?" "No," Elena said firmly. "We learned something from this war. Empires are built on the belief that one species has the right to rule others. We reject that. Humanity will rebuild. We'll explore. We'll trade. But we won't conquer. Because we remember what it felt like to face an empire that believed it was inevitable." She smiled slightly. "Besides, you don't need us to lead you. You freed yourselves. You rose up and claimed your own future. That's stronger than anything we could give you." The assembly continued for days. Alliances were formed, trade agreements negotiated, mutual defense pacts signed. The Free Worlds Coalition was imperfect, fractious, and chaotic. But it was free. Harvex Prime, the Zorvathi defector, was given a choice by the Coalition. He could return to what remained of Dominion space, or he could stay and help build something new. He chose to stay. "I spent 93 years serving an empire built on fear," he said. "I would like to spend my remaining years building something better." He became an advisor to the Coalition, helping former subjects understand Dominion technology and tactics. Some species couldn't forgive him for his past. Others saw him as a symbol that even those who had enforced oppression could change. Admiral Okonkwo retired from military service. He returned to Earth, to a small house overlooking the ocean. He spent his days writing memoirs, trying to capture what had happened and what it meant. One passage became particularly famous. "We were outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched in every measurable way. By all logical calculations, we should have surrendered. But humans have never been particularly logical when it comes to freedom. We crossed into the Dominion, and we didn't. Not because we knew we would win, but because hesitation is what tyrants count on. They depend on your fear, your calculation of odds, your rational decision to survive at any cost. But there are some costs too high to pay, some principles too important to abandon. And when you make that decision, when you choose freedom over survival, you become dangerous. Not because of your weapons or your numbers, but because you've rejected the fundamental premise of tyranny. You've said, "I would rather die than submit." And once you've said that, once you've truly meant it, no empire can hold you. Because empires are built on fear, and you've conquered your fear. 10 years after the war, Elena Marquez stood on the bridge of a new ship. The TSS Horizon, a pure exploration vessel with no weapons except point defense. She was leading an expedition beyond the old Dominion borders, into unexplored space. Her crew was mixed now, humans, Varathi, Silkari, even two Zorvathi who had rejected the old empire. They were mapping new systems, making contact with new species, building relationships instead of conquests. "Captain, we're approaching the target system," her navigator reported. "Unknown energy signatures detected." "Could be another civilization." Elena smiled. "Well, let's go introduce ourselves. And this time, let's start with friendship instead of war." The Horizon jumped forward into unknown space. Behind it, the Free Worlds Coalition continued to grow and evolve. The Dominion's remnants still existed, fractured and diminished. Occasional conflicts flared, but nothing like the old empire's iron rule. And across the galaxy, other species heard the story. The tale of a small, stubborn species that crossed into an empire and refused to hesitate. The story of beings who chose death over slavery. The legend of humanity's impossible victory. Some dismissed it as exaggeration, but those who had lived through it knew the truth. The humans hadn't won through superior technology or overwhelming force. They had won by being willing to pay any price for freedom. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo for generations. Empires fall not because they face stronger enemies, but because they underestimate the power of beings who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Elena stood on her bridge, looking at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there were new worlds, new species, new possibilities. A war was over. The fight for survival had ended. Now came the harder work of building peace. But that was a challenge humanity was ready to face. They had crossed into the Dominion and hadn't hesitated. They had stared down an empire and refused to budge, blink. Whatever came next, they would face it the same way. With courage, with determination, without hesitation, because that's what humans do.